things, we're starting to get more into some brain rot, and I promise at the end of a little bit of brain rot, we'll have like a little sanity break and then more brain rot. Okay. But to start things out with just kind of an insane palate cleanser, you all remember Owen Benjamin, right? Owen Benjamin, we've talked about him a couple of times here, mostly because he keeps trying to argue that nuclear weapons are fake. And we did a whole video about that recently, because it resurfaced due to a video by one of the science YouTubers, one of the big ones. The guy who looks like Thor. I don't remember what is that channel? Guy who looks like Thor. Science YouTuber. Come on, chat, help me out here. Kyle. Yes. You are correct, but what's the name of the channel? My God, I'm having a brain fart right now. Saying Kyle is not helping. What's the name of the channel? Kyle Hill. There we go. Thank you. I think his channel is just Kyle Hill. Because my brain is so politically brain poisoned right now that I hear the word Kyle, the name Kyle, and I'm like, yes, Kyle Kalinske. No one else could possibly be named Kyle. Kyle Hill. Kyle Hill did a video about kind of in response to Owen Benjamin and like this whole conspiracy of like nuclear weapons being fake. And we went into it, and really, like, Owen Benjamin is like just straight up a Nazi. Like he's a Nazi. He pretends to be a comedian, but he's just a Nazi. And he is now going somewhat viral for a tweet because, of course, he got reinstated on Elon Musk's Twitter. But let's just take a look at this because it's a lot. Quote, picking cotton and singing songs outside and coming home to a hot meal from the farm sounds like heaven. I'd love that life. Sure beats getting cannibalized in Africa. So let's just pause there because there's so much more to this. This is him doing the slavery apologia turned up to like 12. Because this is actually like especially if you like go to the American South, which I've been there a couple times, you will encounter white people who are like, oh yeah, slavery wasn't actually that bad. Like slaves went out in the fields, they sang songs, they were happy, and then they got a free meal. They got free meals and lodging. Like it was pretty good. There are people who sincerely believe that, right? Owen Benjamin believes in nothing. All he has in like his soul is Nazism, right? And so all he's doing here at the opening part of this is like casting his net to try and trap as many of those, white people who just, went through an education system that taught them that slavery was actually pretty good for black people. And, he's casting his net specifically to recruit more people to become Nazis. Like that's like his entire thing, right? Sadly, having grown up in Alabama, some of those people were my relatives. Yeah, like this is a thing. And if you are, from like a more like a city, or from more northern parts of the United States, you might not have ever encountered this idea, but it's shockingly real and rampant across the entire American South. Right? And let's continue here because it gets worse. I mean, oh God, we didn't even mention the part where at the end he's like, sure beats being cannibalized in Africa. And like, this plays into kind of this evangelical idea that Africa is a wild, savage place where people like live in mud huts and then they like pick up spears and they go and kill each other and eat each other's flesh, right? When that's not how life in Africa was. Like, people weren't eating each other. Like that wasn't a thing, right? You can maybe find like fringe examples of it, but to say that was like the norm in Africa in like the 1800s is like wildly incorrect. Wildly incorrect. There are still some people today who think that Africa as a continent, outside of like South Africa or Egypt, is just mud huts and people like doing ritual magic and like stabbing out each other's hearts and eating them. Like they and this is particularly common a belief in evangelical Christianity, because evangelical Christians often place an emphasis on evangelism, oddly enough, in the name. And part of the pitch of becoming a missionary and evangelizing is basically sending young people off on missionary work to Africa. And part of the pitch is, well, we're going to rebuild the African infrastructure. We're going to build a well. We're going to build a schoolhouse, you know? And part of the marketing, because these things are big enough and well established enough to be like entirely marketed campaigns, part of the marketing of it is portraying these people as poor primitive savages, which like they're not. Like you can just Google like any country in Africa and it turns out that they have like huge well-developed cities, like, and like every city, they have problems that they're constantly working to overcome and solve. Fuck, I never even realized that. Yeah, no, it's like part of the marketing of evangelical Christianity, and I know this because like my dad got really into that stuff. There's an organization in particular called is it just World Ministries? Is it? I don't think that's it. It's like World something or other. And they like market like, oh, instead of giving your relatives a gift, you could just buy a cow for a family in Africa. Like through like the Christian church. Yeah, it's not just like a like Latter-day Saints type of thing. This is rampant across all of evangelical Christianity. Yeah, Shai Halud. It's similar to those, like, for just $2 a day, you can feed 500 starving African children. Like, a lot of this is related to perpetuating colonial stereotypes. So, again, I know that was, like, a lot of words to explain, like, a really stupid sentence. But that's where that particular framing is coming from. It's coming from that place. And it's meant to appeal to people who have already fallen for that propaganda from their churches, I bet those early American Christian settlers genuinely thought they were helping these people. Imagine if someone went back in time and showed what happened. So, I mean, we're just going to stop there. I need to be very clear about this. Early American Christian settlers were not like comfortable with slavery. Okay? What we see at the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade is people who are engaging with it because they are able to reap massive economic benefits from it. Damn the consequences. But what you can see through like the course of like centuries after the initial establishment of the transatlantic slave trade is a constant development of intellectual and moral defenses of slavery. And those needed to exist in order to like convince people not to feel uncomfortable keeping people as property. You know? This the entire idea of like phrenology, of like the inherent inferiority of black people, of the idea that like black people were lesser than, all of this was literally like designed to protect the idea of slavery, because if they're lesser people, well then they deserve lesser treatment. They don't know any better to expect anything better than what they're being given as slaves. And it is, I mean, you can find this in like even early American Christian thought. Like this point that he's making here is so weak that you can like go back and you can find early Americans or even early Europeans talking about the transatlantic slave trade and objecting to it on moral grounds. People back then knew it was evil too. The issue was that there was a huge financial incentive to come up with, philosophical and intellectual frameworks to justify the cruelty. So let's keep going here. Imagine if someone went back in time and showed them what happened, that they now feel entitled to free money forever because of the kindness given to them by the early Americans. So just stop here. The kindness that he's referring to here is slavery, their enslavement. He's framing their forcible kidnapping and enslavement as beneficial kindnesses, And like more so than that, he's trying to say that like African Americans in the current day expect free money forever because of that kindness, which like I've never met an African American who has expected free money forever. That's not a thing that exists. Like even African Americans who advocate for reparations generally aren't advocating for getting free money forever. They have actual policies. They have actual policy goals. But yeah, again, this is like what a fascist looks like. It's just that Owen Benjamin is incredibly blunt about being a fascist, which makes him easy to identify. But there are plenty of people, plenty of American conservatives who agree with every single point he has made so far. And in fact, I would argue that many of the American mainstream conservatives believe everything he has said. Possibly even a majority. Let's continue here. It's so insane. Cotton is one of the lightest crops to carry. The Irish had to dig potatoes in the muck, and I guess this is just a typo. The blacks basically just carried around pillows and sang songs, and now they want an apology. Such assholes. So yeah, his main point here is actually that the real beleaguered people of the earth are the Irish, and because they had to dig for potatoes. ignoring the fact that like black people were also enslaved to farm potatoes. Like that wasn't unique to the Irish. And second of all, like harvesting cotton is one of the most like laborious crops to harvest. Like, yeah, the cotton itself might be light, but getting that cotton is a huge pain in the ass. Hence the desire to have free labor do it. Like it's one of the hardest plants to harvest material from. And he's upset that black people would want that like African Americans in America would want an apology for their enslavement, for hundreds of years of being turned into property. And like, I mean, part of what is so disgusting about this, right, is that if you actually know anything about American history, and specifically like the slave trade in American history, you know that like there was a period of time during which slavery was still legal in the United States, but shipments of new slaves were cut off. And what happened during this time was that essentially the slave trade continued to flourish within America because different plantations would set up breeding programs for enslaved people. Because when they're slaves, they are owned. Right? And this is something that gets glossed over a lot in like American history classes. But they were literally treated as property, including up to and including their ability to procreate. You know, like it goes beyond just like masters raping slaves. It was forcing them to rape each other under penalty of like death and torture. And this is the kindness he's talking about. Like, he's just like, oh, haha, yeah, they just had to carry pillows and sing songs, haha. And the worst part about it is, again, to reiterate, this is not that far off from what mainstream conservatives think about everything he said. He's just saying it very, very explicitly. This is why the mainstream conservative movement right now, which is fascist, keep in mind, is evil. It's why we need to oppose it at every possible turn with every tool in our disposal. Because people like him will be given power if that fascism is allowed to come into fruition. Well, Crystal Hazer, a lot of people have never even seen a cotton plant. A lot of people in America, no idea what cotton looks like or how hard it is to pick. There were massive concentration camps established post-Civil War, essentially death camps on par with the Holocaust, or rather American extermination policies, and camps fueled inspiration for the Holocaust. Yeah, I mean, also Shakespeare, like, I mean, all of this is, I'm talking in relation to, like, Owen Benjamin's tweet here. But, like, yeah, at some point, it'd be nice to do a nice... I think it might be good for us to do a deep dive into all of the ways America paved the way for the Holocaust. A lot of people in America, we like to pat ourselves on the back for like, oh, we won World War II, but we absolutely don't take credit for pioneering all of the ways like to destroy people that went into creating the Holocaust that we were behind, you know? What does that have to do with today? Wait, what does what have to do with today? Happy to answer the question if I have a specific to latch onto. Yeah, I mean, like we can talk about how the gas chambers were invented by the United States to gas migrant workers from Mexico, um, with enough chemicals to make people sick every day, but not quite enough chemicals to kill them. Exactly, Sweet Miss Music. You know what I'm talking about. We even use the same chemical used to kill Jewish people. What does the cotton have to do with today? Specifically, we're talking about this tweet where Owen Benjamin, a neo-Nazi, talks about how picking cotton is actually super easy, and slaves were being done a kindness by white people. So that's what it has to do with today. People today think that slavery and picking cotton was good for black people. That we did them a favor by stealing them from their families. There we go. Oh God, really? Yeah, really. There was, in a nutshell, there was essentially a fear of foreigners driven by germ theory gaining more mass adoption, and essentially, it was both germ theory and also different like pests like lice and stuff. And foreigners were seen as more inherently dirty, because they were darker skinned. And so basically every migrant worker who came into the United States to work in like the early 1900s was forced to go through like decontamination, both coming and going from the United States. It was really disgusting. So, yeah. I mean, we can talk about how Lindbergh and Henry Ford were decorated by the Nazis for their contributions to like hating Jews. Oh yeah, the OG chemical was carbon monoxide for sure, but when that became too expensive, it was far cheaper for them to use the American model of gassing people to death. Yeah, the crackdown on indigenous people in the late 1800s, early 1900s also inspired Hitler. It's true. See. All right, we're gonna move on from that one. I read NASA maybe Nazis from World War II. Well, there was a thing called Operation Paperclip after World War II, where a lot of scientists from that had worked with or were part of the German government were brought over to the United States and granted amnesty in order for them to continue working on scientific achievement in the United States. And one of the most prominent of them were rocket scientists, which obviously went a pretty long way towards getting NASA off the ground, literally. I've literally had people this year confide in me that we did black people a favor. They are out there. Yeah, no, it's not. It's something that like a lot of people in America still believe due to like faulty education and like the white supremacist culture a lot of people are raised in. But like I think a lot of those people know that it's not acceptable to share that opinion. They know that like that's a disgusting thing to believe. And it's pretty gross. So if somebody confides that in you, like immediately slap down that idea, Yeah, it wasn't a good convo after they said that. I would hope not, Shai Halud. Yeah, basically, as soon as World War II ended, the Cold War really took off. Puffin Joe, thank you for the 5 gifted subs over on Twitch. I very much appreciate that. Also, hello, Puffin Joe. Let's see. Is it for some reason? Oh yeah, it's gonna do each one of them. Okay, 1 second. I don't know why it's gonna do this, but that's fine. Hello, Puffin Joe. Oh yeah, Hapsley. Can I hijack for a moment? I've been non-binary but femme presenting for 3-ish years now. Lately, mainly because I watched Sort of, I felt more comfortable in my femininity, and I think I'm ready to finally accept that I'm a trans woman and not non-binary. Wanted to share this news with the community since I've been here since I came out. Well, congratulations, Hapsley. Also, you've been out for 3 years already? That's amazing. That's amazing. Salmon Moose, thank you for subscribing with Prime over on Twitch. Also, Hapsley, I feel like that's a very common arc. I myself was like starting in like 2015. I was kind of aware that I was like not cisgender, but I wasn't sure like how trans I was, if that makes sense. And so I identified as non-binary for a few years, maybe 2 years, until I felt comfortable enough to say that I was a trans woman. So I feel you there, I feel you. See, Sophie, it goes so deep that slave owners thought that runaway slaves were just mentally ill because they tried to convince themselves that what they were doing was right and good for black people, that any black person who didn't want to be a slave must be insane. Yeah, no, like it literally all of the framework around which people in the South would generally understand slavery was designed in order to like protect the mental health, the mental state of slave owners, right? And that framework was so strong and so like put together specifically to avoid kind of any kind of moral introspection that like it persists to this day. Like people still keep talking about that stuff in those same terms. I think that's part of Trump's appeal. He's upfront about the river of pink ooze of horrible racism and xenophobia coursing through so many Americans. His forwardness feels liberating to them. I agree, winners and losers, and that's why I think that's part of why I think he's so dangerous. He's just upfront with the fascism. He'll just stand in front of a crowd of screaming fans and say, "I'm going to suspend the Constitution," and they'll cheer for it. There was a runaway illness invented. I actually didn't know this. That people would argue that like black people didn't have souls. That I knew about, but I didn't know that there was like they tried to pathologize slaves wanting to be free. That's insane.